Hello and good morning friends, welcome once again to the CEC-UGC live lecture. Dear friends, in this session today we would be discussing on the 10 models of the communication. We are not only going to discuss on those models, we would be critically analyzing all the models so as it will lead to acceptance to a model which is relevant to India and is in the present context. And for this we have again with us in our studios Professor Devesh Kishore. Dr. Kishore is a Professor Emeritus with Makhanlal Chaturvedi National University of Journalism and Communication, as well as he is a former Director of Electronic Media Production Center IGNOU. Currently he is associated with a number of the leading mass communication institutes where he visits and disseminates information, what all he has through his entire life, the entire experience he shares with his students. So first of all, I would like to welcome our guest Professor Devesh Kishore, and I hope that this session is going to be very interesting, because not only we are going to discuss on the communication models, we are basically going to critically analyze them and would be reaching to a conclusion at the end. So welcome to the EduSet lecture, sir.
Thank you very much. Well, today we will have discussion on various communication models which are prevalent today all over the world. I have selected 10 models for today's discussions, which are very important models of communication. The basic purpose of today's discussion is that all of us should become aware of the various components in each model, their relationship, how they are interacting with each one of the elements, and how much they are relevant in present context. We as students of communication models, we should be able to select some of those components which we think are important for building a communication model for India. It is always better to know what models have been given by other experts, what points they have considered, how relationship they have established, and how they have reached to a conclusion that communication process can be of this type and its shape should be like this. So let us take up the first model, which is Aristotle model. This model, which has been developed, you can see that there are 5 elements of communication which have been shown, and 4 in the circle, and the 5th one is the down outside the circle. Let us take up those elements which are inside the circle. Why they are inside the circle? Because Aristotle thought these 4 are the important basic elements of the communication. That is the speaker. We also agree the speaker is very important in any communication process, because he is the person who starts the communication between the different groups of people or individuals. So therefore, speaker and receiver are 2 important elements. He named them as audience. Audience is the receiver of the information, and for communicator he named them as speaker. So first element is speaker, and then he has shown the second element as speech. Now when he says speech, it means that when a person is delivering a speech, there is some content, there is some subject matter, there is some message, then only he is able to deliver a speech. Let us think, if there is a speech and there is no subject matter, there is no message, then how he is going to speak, what he is going to talk? Nothing. So, therefore, the second important element in the communication process is the speech, and third, as I mentioned earlier, is the audience, and fourth is effect. When a communicator, a speaker delivers a speech to the listeners, to the audience, then there should be some effect of it. If there is no effect, then there is no communication. Communication just like a ball, when you throw the ball, it must come back, or it must go away, or it must reach to a certain height. There should be some reaction to the ball when you have thrown it. So, therefore, as a speaker, when you have communicated a message, when you have delivered a speech, there should be some effect on the listeners or on the audience. So, he thought these are the four basic important elements, but fifth element which he has mentioned, he said occasion is very important, time is very important. At what time that message has been given, that makes its importance to the audience. Let us say if a speaker is talking to the rural population about cultivation of paddy, and next season is only wheat, he is going to put wheat in the fields, grow the wheat, then he will not be able to listen, because that is not a proper occasion, that is not the proper time to talk, and therefore, it is very important that when a speaker delivers a speech, it must be timely. Timely not only in terms of the duration, date, time, but interest also. If the audience is interested, they are already motivated, they will be able to listen it properly. So, when we see this model of Aristotle, then we find that there are four basic important elements. Remember, speech, first was the speaker, speech, second, third audience, fourth effect, and fifth was occasion. This is the old, almost very old model. About 300 BC this model was developed. Now let us come to the very popular model, which is named as Shannon and Weaver's model. This is second model. It was developed in 1949 by Shannon and Weaver, and it is proposed as a mathematical model. Now you will see in this model carefully, there are 5 boxes on the top and 6 boxes below the channel, which is noise source. Now let us understand what are the elements or components in this model. First, he is named as information source. In the earlier model, it was a speaker. Information source, he says, not necessarily will be a speaker. There could be several information sources. There could be a book through which the information is being sent. It could be a written material. So, therefore, he named that information source, and he said this information source is trying to give the message to whom? Again to the audience, but before giving to the audience, what the information source does? Information source takes the message and transmit it. That is what he said, encoded. Transmitted means, what is the meaning of transmitter here? Means suppose you have a message, you are trying to communicate, you will be communicating through some transmitter, maybe a broadcasting it using towers. In case of telephones, you find the different types of towers are being used. If you are writing the message, sending it, it could be a book, it could be a journal, it could be a magazine, any print material. So, therefore, they are different transmitters, and he says when you write for transmitters, that is encoding. Encoding means you put the message in such a manner which could be transmitted. For example, if you are using radio, then you have to put a message for radio transmitter using sound and language. You cannot write and send it in broadcast system. Therefore, you will have to encode those messages using that channel or using that sound or visuals or writing, whatever, you will be using those as signals and then putting it to a channel. So, according to him, first is the information source, second is the transmitter in which you encode the message, third he says the channel as I was discussing, when you are encoding according to channel. Channel may be radio, newspapers, television, social media, whatever. There are channels. And from channels, these signals are received by whom? By the receiver. If it is a printed material, he reads it. If it is a case of radio broadcast is there, he listens to it. If it is in case of television, he listens and views it. So, therefore, you will find the encoded material, encoded message is decoded by the receiver. He interprets it. If it is written, he reads it. If it is a sound broadcast, he listens to it, and then he is decoder. So, he says the receiver is a decoder. The speaker there, he said first is the encoder. So, he says this is a model in which we should say encoder encoded the message, transmits it through a channel received by the receiver or the decoder, and then he gets the message and message reaches to its destination. The important thing here you will find that the sixth box which is given below, that is the noise source. In earlier Aristotle model this was not there. What is noise source? Noise source, he says, when you start encoding the message and this message is transmitted by using a channel, there could be several types of noises, means the barriers may enter into the process. For example, if a speaker is writing the message, that means he is encoding the message for a print material, then he might not be able to use proper words, or he may not be able to use proper sentences, or maybe he may be using difficult words or flowery language or metaphors. Now, that makes the process of interpretation difficult. So, here is the noise source has entered from speaker side. When you are putting up a transmission, then again there could be mechanical problems, mechanical disturbances, machine problems, tape recorders problems, they might enter, and they will be all noise sources. So, any type of problem, barriers which enter into the system and make the encoder difficult to understand or interpret it, that is the noise source. I hope noise source is clear, and this is a real problem to a speaker, to the communicator, to the people who build up the communication strategy, because the more the noise source, more will be the barrier for communication. Its effectiveness will go down. So, noise source have to be reduced, and that who will have to see? The person who is trying to communicate the information source, that is whatever you are using to communicate, you must try to see that it does not become a barrier in the process of communication. So, this was Shannon and Weaver's model. Please remember them, because when you have to develop your own model, then you will have to take different components which you think are more relevant in the present context, and then you will be able to develop it. Why do we study models prepared by different experts? We study them, we analyze them, we critically discuss them, so that we understand what are the views of other experts, what type of model they have prepared, and later on, after we become very much aware of the various models developed by different people and different components, then it helps us to develop our own model in our own context. For example, in development context we can have one model, in a political scenario we can have one model, or we may have the same model with different minor modifications. But before you want to be successful communicator, you must work out your own model of communication, because model depends upon several factors, especially the noise source. You have to be very careful about noise source and will have to identify what creates problems in non-effective communication. Now, let us examine the third model, which is popularly known as SMCR model. S stands for source, M stands for message, C stands for channel, and R stands for receiver. This is David Berlo's model, SMCR model. Now, if you see on the top line, he has indicated only 4 important elements of the communication process. He says source, message, channel and receiver. These are the 4 basic things in a model which have to be taken care of if you want to communicate effectively the information to the receivers. And then he says, if you see this model very closely, examine it, then you will find the source and the receiver have same characteristic. Please see this carefully, and you will find on the top communication skills for the source and the receiver should be same. What does it mean? It means source must know how to communicate effectively. He should be trained in using channels, in coding process, all that he must keep in mind. And the receiver should know how to decode it. Whatever has been communicated by the source using language are the sound, are the pictures. The receiver must know how to get the message from a written material or from a broadcast or from the visual, audio-visual pictures or messages. So, or even for example, if a teacher is delivering a talk, a lecture, let us say in your classroom, when he is delivering a lecture of 45 minutes, now you are not noting down everything. So, you should know as a student what to note down and what not to note down, how to prepare your notes. So, preparing a note is the skill of the student. Those who prepare good notes, they are very helpful to him during examination. If notes are not prepared well, then he will find something is missing. So, what is he indicated? He indicated that the communication skills for encoding process must be well known and should be used effectively by the information source or by the speaker. Same way he said that the audience should have the communication skills to get the messages from that material which is useful to him. Now, if you when we have seen the Aristotle model, it was not there like that. It was just saying receiver. Now, please come to the next point, that is the attitude. What does it mean? Attitude for the speaker and attitude for the receiver must tune. That means the speaker should be interested to communicate and receiver should be interested to receive it. To understand this, you are sitting in the classroom, and if you close your eyes and ears, and if teacher is talking something, you will not be able to get it, because your attitude is negative. You are not interested. That is why you have closed your eyes and ears. What does it indicate? It indicates that the receiver and the speaker must have positive attitude. Both of them must be interested in the process. I remember when I was a student of high school intermediate, outside the principal office, there was a slogan written, and the slogan says, if the learner has not learnt, it means teacher has not taught. Very powerful slogan. The principal at that time used to say, if your students have not learned from your lecture to the teachers, then you are not an effective teacher. They must learn it. And I think that was very important at that moment of time. But as the years passed, I visited that school again after 10 years, and I found that was painted off. There was no more slogan there. So when I went inside and then I checked with the person concerned, they said, yes, the same principle is there, but this has been painted off. So I became interested to know why. It was a very important message, slogan. If learner has not learned, it means teacher has not taught. So I requested the PS, can I meet the principal? I am the old student of this college. And he talked to him, he said, all right, let him come and we will appreciate. So, when I went inside, I met him, I paid my respect and I asked him this question. Then he smiled and laughed and he said, well, I have painted it off. So, I said, sir, are you not convinced with that slogan now? He said, yes, in present context I am not. I said, why? He said, if the student does not come to the class, he misses that particular lecture, then teacher is not responsible. Then it means he will not learn it. Or if a student comes, closes his eyes and ears, then he will not learn it. Then why should we blame the speaker? So, the learner, the receiver should be equally interested. I think it is a very important point. If both of them are not have the positive attitude, the teacher is not interested to communicate, the speaker is not interested in communication, audience is not interested to listen to him, then where is the communication? So, in this model of David Berlo's model, the important thing is, as has been shown, is the attitude. Third thing he said, knowledge. Now, I was wondering what knowledge? The interpretation of the knowledge, he said, the source must be a knowledgeable person, must know in and outs of that information or masses. He must know all the details of the masses. And the receivers should have background information to absorb it, to get it. If he does not have background information, he will not be able to understand it. For example, there are so many examples. If you take newspaper, if somebody is reading everyday newspaper, then he will be able to understand all the events very quickly. But if you are reading on and off, maybe after 10 days, you will not be able to understand because you are not knowing what has happened in those days. So, it means the source must be knowledgeable, should have all the information, and receiver should have background knowledge. Next is, I would say, suggested social system and culture. Both of them should be from the same system, same member of the society. I remember when a speaker comes from other country and when he starts speaking, then there is a lot of noise enters into his presentation. It could be a verbal presentation, maybe pronunciation is not clear, sentences are not clear, his gesture communications are not clear. So, you will find the person, if from different system, social system and cultural system, then it becomes a little effective on the audience. Audience must also be from the same culture. So, I think these are the 5 characteristics of the speaker and audience according to this model, SMCR model, must be similar, which were not said in earlier models. The third important thing in this is, he says for any message, M stands for message, important elements are the content and their treatment. Treatment means what? Means the content which has been expressed, how have you used it, set the examples to make the point clear. That has to be taken care of. Then the third thing which has been shown here by him, that every human being gets the information through his senses, and all of us have only 5 senses, 6th is nonsense. So, for 5th senses, 5 senses we have is the seeing. If we see, we believe, and when you just see a thing, whole story is communicated to you. That is very important. Then hearing, we get the message through sound, and then touching, like smelling and tasting. So, these are the 5 senses every human being has got, or God is giving to him. Therefore, all the channels of communication are based on that. For example, TV is based on seeing and hearing, radio is based only on hearing, and perhaps the newspaper is also based on seeing. You will find the top 2 senses, seeing and hearing, are very important. Lot of channels are dependent on seeing and hearing. Touching, smelling and tasting, very few. But sometimes they are also very important for communication. So, now let us keep in mind the good points of this model, because we have to develop a model in the last. So, let us go on collecting good points of the first model, second model and third model. When we develop the model, we take all the good points and develop our own model. Let us examine the fourth model. This is Lasswell's model. It is very nicely put in one sentence. He says communicator, agreed, message, yes, he also agree, medium, channel, yes, receiver, audience, effect. Now, please compare with the third model which I have just finished. There effect was missing, while in the first model effect was there, means feedback. So, you will find that most of the people are giving emphasis on effect. After you communicate the message, what is the result? So, effect is one of the very important, and he says if you combine all these 5 elements, the definition of the communication comes out very well. Communicator, who, message, says what, medium, in which channel, receiver, to whom, effect, with what effect. So, if you combine all the 5, the definition is who says what, in which channel, to whom, with what effect. So, one sentence definition, who says what, in which channel, to whom, with what effect, communicates the whole model. And according to Lasswell, it was the best definition of communication model, in which all the 5 elements are taken care of. But if you again realize and analyze it, you will find the noise source which was indicated in the second model. Now, here there is no place for noise source, which is also very important thing. If there is noise, people will not get the message, whether with the speaker, whether with the audience, with the channel, whatever. So, keep on adding the good points which are shown in each model. Let us come to the next model, which is known as Osgood's model, developed by Charles E. Osgood model. Now, here you see what he has done. He has said that the whole model is a cyclic process, never ending process. It goes on and goes on and goes on. If you see the first, He says that there should be encoder who will encode the message. So, he says the message is very important, and he just encodes the message and send it to the receiver, and receiver decodes it. So, according to him, encoding of message and decoding of message is the model of communication. In that process, he says that the speaker should be a good encoder, also a good interpreter and decoder, because when the listener or viewer or audience want to say something, then they are encoder and the communicator becomes decoder. So, you will see that he has put the process very simple, using only a methodology of encoding and decoding of the message, and he says that is in nutshell is the model of communication. It looks very brief, because if you start comparing with earlier 4 models, you will find a lot of things are missing. It is a very simplistic way of saying encoder encodes the message sent to the decoder and decodes the message, and that process is the communication. Of course, there are 3 elements which have been taken here: the speaker, audience and the message. What happens to channel? Channel is missing here. See, he assumes that when he is encoding, he must be using a channel. So, he has combined the speaker, the channel, the noise source, everything into one. Same thing he has done with the decoder. So, I think it is a too much confused type of model. It requires a lot of explanation to make the points clear, to understand the whole philosophy behind it. He says, according to this model, I interpret that speaker and listener, they are only 2 important people. Message is the information to be communicated. That is what I find in the model. Let us go to the 6th model. 6th model is Schramm's model. Now, you will see a very interesting phenomena here. According to Schramm, feedback and noise are on the top written, and he says A, M and B, and then he has also shown the interactive model, the cyclic process. He also says that everything will go on and go on and go on. You cannot separate them out. So, he says feedback is very important. According to Schramm model, feedback is very important at all these stages. That makes the communication process more effective if you go on collecting the feedback and go on responding to it. And second thing which shows here, noise. Noise is very important, it has to be controlled. Whether it is noise in the channel or in the message or in the receiver, whatever noise source is there has to be removed. So, according to him, the important role is played by feedback and the noise, which has to be taken care of. Let us go to the second, very, very interesting, Don's model. Can you see the spiral? Now, what does it indicate? It indicates when it starts, spirals circle are small and they go up and up and their size goes on increasing, and then the audience is getting. This model means that when you start communicating to the people, you start with a smaller perhaps group of people, and the message goes on spreading and diffusing and disseminating and reaches to the people. I have added 2-3 words: diffusion, dissemination and seer. According to him, he gives an example there. When you light the scented sticks, agarbatti, then what happens? The smoke comes out, very little smoke, and the fragrance is spread in the whole room. So that is a diffusion process. Dissemination is when we are communicating to some people certain information using various channels, then disseminating it. So therefore, according to him, he emphasizes that the diffusion is an important process of communication, or dissemination on a wider is another important communication. So the message spreads in the beginning to little smaller group of people, then the group becomes larger and larger, and then the information goes to number of people. So he says that if information is strong, powerful, it spreads very fast on its own. You may not require many channels and all that. Very simplistic model. Then we come to the another very important model called governor's model. Now please read it carefully. Someone perceives on events and reacts in a situation through some means to make available materials in some form and context, conveying content with some consequences. I think everything has been taken from all the models in this. Someone is a speaker or encoder, but here he says perceives on an event and reacts in a situation. He says that a speaker perceives from whatever is happening, then he reacts with the situation, and through some means through some channels, he make them available in some form or the contact, make it available either in broadcast or in telecast or in newspaper or magazines or social media in some forms, and convey the contents. Then he conveys the content of the message with some consequences. Then here consequences means feedback. So I think the governance model, if you see, he has taken most of the element from our earlier models. Then we come to the next model, same governance model, which I have put down in a picture form. If you see this model, there is nothing new except to explain his point of view, where in this model number 8, which we discussed, he has shown the perceptual dimension, relationship between communication agent and world of events, that is selection and context availability in that. Now that carefully has to be seen and understood. I will not give lot of emphasis on this in understanding, but I would suggest that the point of media control which has been indicated here, that is source, form, e-content, according to him there is the selection context availability. If we are watching a TV and we have so many channels, we have a remote control with us, we go on switching to one to another channel and like that, and then he may switch from one message to second message to third message very fast. So, according to him that care has to be taken. We come to the next model, Newcomb's model. Are you watching it? Are you seeing these models very carefully? The models which have been shown later on, they are always emphasizing in cyclic process. That is, communication is a continuous process. It never ends. It goes on and goes on and goes on. Here also same thing it has been shown. There is a message sender who sends the message. The message is basically a topic, and this topic is communicated to the message receiver. Now you will see that in this model the arrows have been shown, and peculiarity is that the message sender, message receiver are responsible for the topic. Both are responsible. Message sender is responsible in building the topic and communicating. The message receiver is responsible for taking that topic and also interacting with that topic itself. So, that becomes the in that context. Now, in Newcomb's model, the thing which has been shown is the message receiver and message sender. They must closely interact, they must understand each other. If they do not closely interact, the communication flow will not take place, because they are the two basic important elements, that is the message receiver and message sender. Message sender is interested in sending the message and message receiver is receiving the message. So, therefore, message sender may have some questions, may have certain points to be discussed or points to be asked from the message sender himself. So, therefore, two arrows have been shown there. One arrow shows message sender to message receiver, another shows message receiver to message sender. So, it is a two-way process. People go up to the extent of saying, if this two-way process is well established, then communication process will take place smoothly. But if there is something which breaks this two-way communication process, for example, from radio to listener, one-way process. If receiver immediately want to ask question, he has no choice, he may later on send the questions or ask, but immediately there is no interaction. Newspaper, no interaction immediate. Television, no interaction immediate. Now, these channels of communication have no facility for the immediate reaction, except when you are lecturing, when you are discussing, you have immediate reaction and you have immediate face to face situation where they can clarify. So, remember that message receiver and message sender if they are face to face, that is a best situation of communication. But when we introduce an element of transmitting the message using broadcast or using television or using newspaper, then the problem arises. Well, we have to also see the other point of view. When we want to communicate to thousands and thousands of people, then face to face is not possible. Then you will have to use mass media. And when you use mass media, those noise sources will enter into it. And when those noise sources enter it, they become barriers to effective communication. He may not get all that information. So therefore, this has to be taken care of, that how you should build up the message flow from communicator to the receiver, and that is the challenge. Now the 10th or last model for today's discussion is gatekeeping model. What is gatekeeping model? Gatekeeping model is in most of the corporate houses or even in day-to-day situations, they are gatekeepers to the information. Here is shown, for example, there is a news source N. It has got N1, N2, N3, N4, different types of news items. When these news items are collected, then they are gatekeepers, the editor of the news bulletin. Now this person, he may find news 1 is not relevant and news 4 is not relevant, and he discards from that news bulletin. He allows only N2 and N3, news item number 2 and news item number 3, which will be received by member of audience. M is member of audience. So a member of audience gets only N2, N3. They don't get N1, N4. They will not be able to know it. So therefore, gatekeeping model suggests that there are certain information, there are certain news which are not reaching to the people because there are interest groups as gatekeepers to the information, and they checks it on that way whether it should go to the people or not. So that is gatekeeping, keeping gates for the information, what to flow and what not to flow. Now let us recapitulate, understand, see the good points of all the 10, actually 9 models which I have discussed today. Now you have seen that each model has been able to bring certain good points and each model has got certain weaknesses as per our critical discussions. Now what you have to do is that once again you critically see all these models and develop your own model where all these weaknesses could be removed and all the good points could be included. And then you test your model whether it is going to be a model, and maybe you may come out with a good model which India requires, which in India's situation a model will work effectively. That real exercise will help you in understanding the weaknesses and good points of each model. Also, it will help you how to use good points of all the models in building a new model, and that will be your model. So, it is very important to have our own model of communication. That is why you must have been observing there are some leaders, some people, some scientists are good communicators, some are not, because they have developed their own model of communication. Present example people have been giving to me is of the person who contested the elections, Mr. Modi, and they said he has adopted his own model of communication and he became a very powerful communicator. Analyze his model of communication and take some of those good points into your model. Come out with your model which will be really a good model of communication. Prepare like this, which I have shown you 9 models. Make their diagram, show the arrows which indicate the interaction, make either circles or squares or whatever you want to it, but it should be depicted well, and then write down the whole model of communication. Maybe your model may be accepted by the people, and I think I will request CEC to go ahead.
With this note, thank you, sir. Thank you so very much. And as Professor Devesh Kishore has asked you, he has welcomed, already welcomed you for your model. If you would like to share your model on the context of India, if you believe that you can prepare such model, of course you can share with us. We will again critically analyze that model and will give your reference that this model is prepared by you. For that, you can mail us at info.cec@nic.in. Of course, the next time when Professor Devesh Kishore comes, we would surely discussing on your model. Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much.